Hey, Ed with Solomon's Landscape here. I want to do a quick video, or a series of videos. It's hot, it's dry. We haven't had much in the way of rain for a while, so think plants are getting stressed. And the question that gets often asked is, how much should I water? Well, there's a lot of factors involved. What are you watering? Where is it located? Is it in full sun? Is it in full shade? Is it in part shade? So there's a lot of different factors. So we're going to talk about turf grass in this video, and then we'll do another video based on watering plants. Um, so turf grass typically has two major categories: the warm season and cool season. Warm season usually typically in our area, Bermuda grass, Zoysia grass. Cool season in our area is fescue. We do have another video if you want to find out more about those types of grasses. So just search our YouTube channel, and I discuss that in more in depth there. But today we're talking about water and grass. So we'll stop with the warm season. Typically, once warm season grass gets established, it really doesn't need a whole lot of rain or precipitation. It's very drought resistant, drought tolerant, and handles the heat and humidity very well. So if you did want to get an irrigation system for those types of grasses, you absolutely can. Is it 100% necessary? Not necessary, because typically they can survive through the heat of the summer. One thing I will say is, if you don't have an irrigation system, what tends to happen, as many of you all are seeing it currently, as you're driving by. I know I'm seeing it when I'm driving around town. There's a lot of dryness. I mean, a lot of the grass is starting to stress out. And that's even the Bermuda grass, the Zoysia grass. So that's when I know it's really dry out here. So don't light a match. It'll go real fast. So, anyways, on those two types of grasses, the warm season, typically an inch of rain per week is generally a good rule of thumb. There are a couple ways you can tell. I mean, obviously you can have some meters or catch buckets. I think that you have various forms of catching the water, see how much water is going in there. They have some technology that you can put, some very smart technology that you can put in the ground that will actually work in conjunction with your irrigation system. But realistically, a lot of times this time is really hot and dry. So if you'll notice, what happens when the grass gets hot and dry is the fact that it starts to turn. And we'll kind of go for a walk here right quick. So what is, it starts to turn. So here's a Bermuda. See how, I mean, it looks pretty good. I can tell it is a little bit stressed. You can see a little bit of brown coming out. If you're walking, like here's a spot that's turning really brown right in front of me. If you're walking, it starts to turn a little crispy. You can hear it kind of crunchy, and that usually means it's drought stressed. This is sort of a mutt mix right here, but right around this tree is a good stand of Bermuda. And just kind of getting that color. Sometimes it'll turn sort of a bluish tinge, which means it's drought stressed as well. So that's kind of, it does look pretty good, but I can tell it is drought stressed. It's not growing as much, it's a little lighter in color. And so what you want to do there is, realistically, it's already stressed out. Once it rains again, so yeah, once it rains again, in the next week, if we get enough rainfall, it'll green right back up. So that's why I don't say it's necessary to have the grass irrigated. Think of dormancy. It goes into dormancy over the winter time, so it has the ability to go dormant when it is very dry. And so that's what we're seeing right now. A lot of that grass is going into dormancy. Once it rains again, it'll come back. Because that Bermuda grass and that Zoysia grass is a little slower to recover, but they are pretty good about recovering and jumping back, because they're used to handling that situation. So again, 1 inch of rain a week is typically on average. How do I know if it's not? Obviously, just walked around. So one of those things is looking for those signs. When you step on it, is it crunchy? Does it have some browning in it? Is it growing a whole lot? Sometimes you'll see a lighter color almost a blue tinge to it. So those are some of the signs. Is it really, if you mow it, is there a lot of dust coming up? So those are some of the signs for that. Same, we'll talk about the fescues. Same thing. The downfall with fescues is I would recommend an irrigation system because they are what they call cool season, and so they don't like the heat, they do not like the humidity. And so if you are going to that route, I hope you have shade, number one, and number two, hopefully you have an irrigation system, because they really are struggling right now. And the downfall of that is probably this time of year you want to put probably about 1 to 2 inches of rain or water on the turf per week. The other downfall is the fact that because of the humidity, the heat, the water that you have to put down to make it grow or keep it alive, essentially, not make it grow, but just keep it alive, can cause funguses. And so it's still not, it's a good looking grass. It takes a lot more care. But again, that one again, 1 to 2 inches. Same kind of thing with a fescue yard that you're looking for. Is it turning from a dark green to a light green? Is it wilting? Do you have dead spots? Is it crunchy? You'll start seeing it. Once you start seeing that, you do want to water. The downside to that fescue grass is if once it's dead, it will not recover. Once it turns brown, it's dead. Whereas the warm season, the Bermudas and the Zoysias, they may turn brown, but they're going to come back typically. You can't hardly kill those things, so they're very adept. Whereas the fescues, you just got to make sure it's watered and taken care of frequently, because otherwise, once it dies off, turns brown, it's not being replaced. It doesn't have the ability to do that, and so that's why most often people will aerate and overseed their fescue in the fall to replace what died off through the summertime. So there's other measures, other things you can do to test. Those are the visual signs. The other thing you can potentially do is go to the ground and take a little hand trowel, fingers, things of that nature, and kind of see what the grass or the soil looks like. So we'll go. I'm just, for ease for myself, I'm just going to pick up ground, and so I can look at a bare patch of soil. So I'm looking at this bare patch of soil, and I mean, you could choose any spot, even in the grass. Here's one that's kind of tore up. But if you want to, you can do the grass if you don't have any bare spots. But you can tell generally, the soil, look at how dusty, it's very dusty, very dry. I can pick it up. I mean, it's just powder. If I dug this up, it's just going to be powder. It's going to be very difficult to dig into. So that's a very dry soil. Here's some loose soil. And yeah, you can see how dry that is, how loose it is. It's going to be very dusty as well if it's bare. So that's one way you can test the soil. If you're not sure, you take a hand trowel and test it to see, is first of all, if it's dry, it's going to probably be extremely hard to dig, and also it's going to be very loose, very powdery. If that's the case, then it's too dry. The other side of the coin, which we don't normally run into this time of year, is too wet. Because you can overwater as well. So that's a word of caution, it can overwater. In which the soil will be really moist, almost you can roll it into a ball, that kind of thing. So realistically, there is no one correct answer. The best thing to do is, especially if you just moved in or it's a new system, anything like that, hey, how much should I water? Start off with, an average of 10 or 15 minutes a day, or every other day, or maybe every 3 days, depending on if it's new grass, if it's been existing. There's a lot of factors, but generally speaking, about 10 to 15 minutes per zone as a starting point. And then, if it's in the shade, potentially you might have to cut that back. If it's in the sun, you may have to increase it. But realistically, you get a starting point, figure it out, and then just observe the property over time. go out there every day, every week, and observe it for the next couple of weeks, months, just to keep an eye on it. Realistically, you should be checking on it on a regular basis throughout the season, because temperatures fluctuate and the seasons change. So when that happens, just kind of keep an eye on things and make small incremental adjustments until it's where it needs to be. So again, not too dry, but not too wet either. So that's kind of what we do for turf grass. I know this is a bit longer video. Um, so I'm gonna just go ahead and cut that now. But if you have any questions, concerns, drop that below. And I hope that helps for how much should I water grass.